Hi everybody, my name is Jens Larsen. A few days ago I uploaded a chord melody arrangement to YouTube of the song Night and Day. And I'm playing it in a reharmonization, and in this video I'm going to try to go over that reharmonization and talk about how I arrived at the different chords, and also talk a little bit more about what kind of sounds they are, what kind of scales go with them, where did I get the idea from. I think I can maybe in this way also illustrate how when I'm reharmonizing things, and actually when anybody is reharmonizing any song, you're really also making some choices that are not only based in sort of music theory, you're also just using your own taste and the sounds that you're familiar with and that you like, and trying to fit them into the melody so that it makes a coherent whole. Let's just first go over the original changes, because if you have an idea about what the original changes are, then it's a little bit easier to understand how the song and how the reharmonization works. So Night and Day, the way I'm playing it is in the key of C major. The form of the song is AAB, and all the parts of the song are all 16 bars. And the last part of both the A and the B part are pretty much the same, so the last 8 bars are very similar. The first part of the A part is twice the same cadence, and it's a typical Cole Porter cadence because it starts in minor, so it's in C major, and if it's in C major it starts on the A flat major 7, so we get the impression that we're at least not in C major, we're maybe in A flat or E flat or some key like that, maybe C minor, and then immediately turning that into a G7, and then this is sort of the typical Cole Porter thing that we're in minor and then we're in fact still in major. He does that all the time. So, and that is just repeated. And then we get a descending idea where we start from the sharp 4, so the F sharp, and that's an F sharp half diminished. And then to F minor, so 4 minor, E minor, E flat diminished. And then we get a 2/5 back to C. So that's the A part. The second A part is the same, except now we have a dominant at the end also, just to go to the B part. So we get a B flat 7, and then we move up to E flat major 7, back to C. So still E flat, back to C, and then you get essentially the same descending line again. So F sharp half diminished, F minor, and then to D minor, and then this next part, because the melody then goes, which has a C in the melody before it actually ends, and that means we can't really use a dominant, because then we get this. So you can harmonize that in different ways. I think the two ways that I see the most are simply just a G sus4, or you can also use an F minor chord to end the song. Those are the basic changes of the song, at least as I know them. Then we can talk about how I changed them. So the first cadence in the A part, I'm not really changing the chords, I'm just coloring them differently. So I'm staying with A flat to G to C, but the first A flat I'm playing is this one, which is it's a little bit, well, to be exact, the voicing that I'm playing, it doesn't come across that well in the chord melody. I think these sort of really big 6-note chords on guitar are a little bit, and also in this key, are a little bit tricky to get out and to get across in a chord melody arrangement. But in this case, it's an A flat 6 with a sharp 9 and a sharp 11. So the type of sound that is for me is basically just an A flat major 7 with a sharp 9 and a sharp 11. And you will often see that written out as 2 triads. So an G triad, this one, over an A flat triad. And you can also kind of see that in this voicing, I think. So the combination of those two, actually this whole, I mean, it's, of course it's an unexpected color on the melody, because it's not the kind of chord that we sort of come across really often. I think Monk liked it a bit in there, and I know Wayne Shorter tune that has it as well. But otherwise it's not like a chord you come across really often. And it's not that far away, because this chord is actually found in C harmonic minor, so it's still sort of C related in that way. Then I moved to this G7. I think in the chord melody arrangement, one of the times it sounds like I'm just playing this chord, in fact, which makes a lot of sense because they're very similar. So if I look at it from a G perspective, then it's a G13 with a flat 5. If I look at it as being a D flat, then it's a D flat, sharp 9, flat 5. And I think the sound association I have with that would be something like so sort of diminished. And yeah, so it's just sort of the diminished sound is always on a dominant. We're really used to it in jazz, but it is in fact quite well, atonal in fact, so it's quite ambiguous. And then I resolve that to a C chord, and my C, because that's the note, the E that I'm resolving to in the melody, and the C chord I'm using is this one, which is it almost sounds like a D7 chord to me actually, but that's probably because of this tritone down here. And if we look at that, that's the root and a major third, and then we get a sharp 11 and a sharp 5. And especially the sharp 5 really sounds like some sort of suspension. So that's something that I guess I very often do that actually when I'm playing. So I might resolve to a chord like this, and then resolve the sharp 5 down to the 5 or up to the 6, which is what I'm doing here. And then we have this sort of C6 with a sharp 11. So it's very close to this type of sound, which is a D major triad over a C, but we have an E in the melody. So that's the type of sound there is. Of course, the scale-wise, this is all melodic minor material, so it would be like A melodic minor. You could also play that same type of chord. It doesn't. I mean, I need to have the E on top when I'm playing the melody, but it kind of has this type of sound as well, which is like a C6 with a sharp 5 in there and a major 7. Then we get the second cadence. So because in this first cadence, so you can tell like the chords are pretty much the same as the original, so still, but all the colors that are added and all the extensions or alterations that I'm using are very different. So it's still a C major chord, but it's really not the same as this. In the second cadence, because the original song of course just has the same cadence twice, but I chose to have 2 different cadences just to have some variation in there. And I did a Q&A half a year ago, I think, or something like, where I was also talking about reharmonizing night and day, and in there I ended up with using an A major 7 instead of the C major in the cadence, and I really like that sound. That's actually something I do more often, so I guess I have that sort of that change ready available in what I'm used to hearing when I'm harmonizing, I think I sort of stuck with that, and then I wanted to use that one, and then I made a cadence that moved there, that sort of fitted in the context. So that's how that whole cadence came about. So what I did was, instead of doing in the bass, I chose to just have a bass that moves up chromatically. So now I have this bass line, and I need to fit it on the chords. So the A flat major 7 in the original changes is just there to suspend the G7 really. So basically you can play any suspension you want, and the one that I ended up using is just a G sus with a 13, so, which is nice because it's very bright and it's different from what we expect when we want to hear. So it's in the details, but it's a nice way to do that. And then normally you would say, well, this would be a G7, and then it would G7 sus, it would go to G7, maybe G7 altered, and then resolve to C major. But I need to go to A major 7. So what I'm doing is, I still want to do this, but then instead of staying on the G, I move it up to an A flat. So now I have an A flat minor 6, because that works with the melody as well, if you get it. And then I can resolve that up to A major. So that's a little bit how that sort of came about. Maybe that's really loose. I think it was basically just changing the. So for the dominant, I'm just changing the chord so I have the flat 9 in the bass, and that's just to move up to A, really. And then because I do that, I came up with this sort of G sus 4 chord here. Then we have the descending movement here, and I'm playing the first chord is just not a half diminished chord anymore. I'm sort of keeping it a little bit vague, because when you play this, I think you hear a little bit more like a natural fifth, not a flat 5. So in that way, it's just a bit vague actually. But so it's still F sharp minor, but maybe it's like I'm playing a minor 11, and probably it kind of implies that there's a normal fifth in there, but I'm not playing it. And what I ended up doing here was that I took, so the original bass line is of course just moving down chromatically, and so this sort of downwards movement is very typical for tonal music in general. So one way to make something surprising is to just start moving up. I already did it in the second cadence, and that's also what I'm doing with this whole figure. So I'm starting on this F sharp minor 11, and then I just want to move up the bass line, and then basically what I'm doing is if I play the melody, I move up the bass line. Then we almost have the whole thing already. So I'm starting with my F sharp, and then I need to have a chord for this. So I have an E flat in the melody, and I have a G in the bass. And the chord I came up with is this sort of Phrygian sound. So you could call that a G Phrygian. You can also call it A flat major 7 with G in the bass, or with the 7th in the bass. And then I move up to this, I have this melody note, so the D and the A flat. And that's just an A flat major 7 flat 5, and then we get this A, and the way I'm playing it now, it's actually a D7 over A. I think the way that made sense to me was actually to have it as a diminished, so it's essentially the same diminished, it's just a different bass note. But since I have this bass note, it's really nice. I can go to this B flat major 7 and play it here maybe, because that part of the melody just fits a B flat major 7. And then from here, because I want to still have the idea of an ending and I need to go back to C, then I had a G7. I guess I could have done like a B something, B diminished maybe, but I don't know, somehow it just sounds better for me to go to C and then resolve it. And then it really resolves to a C major 7, but what I chose to do was to have this this C major 7 sharp 5 with a G above it, which is possible. I think the kind of scale that you would have for that would be like what's it called? It's called C harmonic major. Let's see. So for this, that actually covers like the whole that whole section in terms of soloing. I mean, I probably for the first chord, probably just like Dorian really, and then this one, well, it's a G Phrygian chord, so probably Phrygian would work really well. And that's essentially the same sound that you would have here, except now it's like an A flat Lydian. And then we get this chord. So if we think of it as being A diminished, probably, yeah, well, I mean, you can actually use the diminished scale. I hardly ever use the diminished scale on a diminished chord, but that is possible certainly. Otherwise, since it's going to B flat major 7, you can use the G minor harmonic, or maybe experiment with E minor harmonic and see how that sort of fits. Those are the two that will fit the best in the context of C major, at least. G7 you can do sort of whatever you want. I'm not sure, I think I played this G7 actually at some point also. So that's it's kind of implying that this might be an altered chord. And C, we already talked about that. And then you get the whole A part again, and I played pretty much the same A part. And then we go to the bridge. So in the bridge, I'm starting off on the E flat major 7, and I'm not doing as many things with the melody on that. So I'm just, because we're already changing and it's already clear that it's going somewhere else. So reharmonizing that is not going to be that effectful, because if there already is like a huge shift in sound in the song, then it asks a little bit less for being changed and reharmonized, I think. Of course, again, that's a question of taste. You could of course do it if you want to. So I'm not really doing anything on the E flat, but I do add sort of a transition to go back, and the transition I chose. So a very common one to use is like to add this Neapolitan subdominant to go back to C. What I ended up doing was that I used that bass note, and then I just, well, actually I'm parallel harmonizing. I'm not sure what the name for that is, but I'm just using the same structure. In this case it's a major triad in the second inversion to harmonize the melody. And it doesn't, this is one of those things where it doesn't actually fit anything. It just works because it's parallel. And you can do that, it works very often when you have the third of a major chord in the melody, for Blue Monk. Which is that same type of idea. So because you just start with the major third and you're moving chromatically, you can actually just play that whole song with just moving around the same voicing. That can be good to do a bit. Of course, if you do it a lot, it's gonna get boring really fast. But I mean, it's a nice thing to throw in there once in a while. You can do that. You can do it with what's it called? It's called "Just Squeeze Me." So that's another song that lends itself well to that idea. That's what I'm doing here. Like the two other examples I know of here, I'm using diminished chords. I could probably have used, but what I wanted to have still the bass note in there, and that kind of limits me. But it is like, it's really sort of living in the fact that these chords all make sense as D flat chords. They're not really that weird. They are different, but I think that kind of makes it work. Of course, if you have another explanation, then you can always leave a comment on the video. Let's see, then we get the same idea, so Phrygian dominant, and then the Lydian, and then the diminished. Then I go to B flat, and then I go up to D minor 7 this time, and then up to this D flat major 7, D flat major 7 flat 5, and that's basically just to cover to have the root in the melody, and then my C major 7 with a contradict. So let's see. Do I need to talk about that? The B flat is already clear. Well, we need to sort of find a way to play this and make it sound like an ending in C. And really what I'm doing is just, since we can't use a dominant, I'm using the Neapolitan subdominant. You can, I guess, pretty much always do that. You could even harmonize the beginning of it. Like that. That would be an option for sure. But yeah, so it's not that mysterious. Then it's nice that we have the G in the melody, so we get like the flat 5, major 7 flat 5 sound, which is just a little bit of richer sound, because I think I do try to use that a bit more in this arrangement, that I'm really going for some chord sounds that are, I mean, you can of course just change the chords and then keep them kind of basic, but you can also try and see if you can come up with chords where you really emphasize more on the extensions, or maybe sort of the things that you don't expect to hear, like the sharp 11s and flat 5s and sharp 5s and those kind of things, which I guess I'm sort of going for that when I'm trying to make this reharmonization. That was the reharmonization and the arrangement of Night and Day. I hope you can use it, and hope it gives you maybe a little bit of insight in how I reharmonize a song and what is possible, and some of the things you can think about, like when you're trying to choose chords and what you're trying to figure out what to do with any kind of song. I mean, this will work, of course. It's similar to how I work if I'm writing a tune in the tools that I have, except of course if I'm writing a tune I have the freedom to also change the melody, and here I'm not really going for that. So if you have any great ideas for how this is put together in terms of explaining it, then leave a comment of course on that, because it's always nice to hear if you see a certain chord change and you think, well, actually to me that sounds like this, then that's interesting to hear, and maybe it's also gonna give, if not me, then maybe somebody else, an idea about how things are sort of put together, because as you can tell, there's not really any sort of logic. We couldn't turn all of this into 2-5-1s. It doesn't really work like that. We're just moving the chords around, and there is sort of a bigger picture in terms of a bass line and the melody, but for the rest there's not so much a relationship between the chords, I think. Well, there is sometimes, but not all the times. Or maybe there's like one logic in the bass and another logic in the chords. So there are a lot of factors that you can do, and you can do a lot of stuff by thinking like this and being aware of how you can think like this. And of course, if you have like your favorite reharmonization of Night and Day and you think, well, actually this works really well at this point of the song, then I'm of course curious to hear that, and I'm sure other people are as well, because it's always just nice to see how people come up with harmony for songs, and what's possible and what works. So if you have an idea like that, then of course leave a comment. I get back to pretty much everybody who comments on my channel, so feel free. For the rest, if you like this video, then please subscribe to my channel. I publish a new lesson every Thursday, and I also do sort of a weekly Q&A or vlog like this one, where this is a little bit more in the theory department, I guess. So if you like stuff like that, subscribe to my channel, and there's a lot of that. I've been doing this for quite some time. If you want to help me keep making all these videos, you should check out my Patreon page. I have a small community of people on Patreon who are helping me get the time and money to keep on making all these videos, which is great, because I really like doing all these videos also. It's a lot of fun to make these videos and think about these things and try to explain how it works. For instance, in this video, I actually, as you can tell, I don't really know how it works. I kind of have to figure it out afterwards, which I also think is part of how you should work with harmony, really. If you have any questions, then leave a comment on this video, or connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Google+, Twitter, Instagram, so there are enough places where you can reach out to me. And for the rest, there's a new lesson on Thursday, so thank you for watching, and until then.